Yeah, getting introduced to Shaun Murray. So, like Brian mentioned, I was a professional wakeboarder for about 12 years, and Shaun Murray was always my role model in wakeboarding for so many reasons. The very first wakeboarding video that I ever bought was a DVD called Detention by Shaun. Actually, no, it was VHS back then, called Detention, and it was about learning all the different wakeboard tricks. And I watched that thing so many times, and so he was a hero to me. And I remember the very first time that I got to meet him was in Orlando, probably in like 2002 or 3, around there, and I got to go wakeboarding with Shaun Murray. And I was living up in South Carolina at the time, so we came down for a trip. And I just couldn't believe it. And so, you have these people that you always see on TV, because at the time, I mean, there's X Games, and he's winning the Worlds, and he's featured on live television all the time, and so you never know what to expect, right? But when I met him in person, he was just the coolest, most humble guy. And he just totally welcomed me in. He totally helped me out. He was giving me great advice about tricks and how to do things and how to help my competition. And it was just really, really cool to see a super, super humble guy like that. So another thing about Murray is, in action sports, it's really easy to seek fame and advance your career and glory and, try and get famous and make more money, especially when you go to these events, right? There's a certain persona, like you feel like you have to put on. And so we never really competed like directly against each other. I was mostly on the junior tour when he was still in the pro tour. But he was there leading the church services every Sunday. And that was one of the reasons that I looked up to him. This is the wakeboarder, he's a family man, and he's a godly man. And he never missed a Sunday. And so when we're out there, you get the impression that he's not there for himself. He's not there to glorify himself. He's not there to make himself look good and to try and advance his career. He'd already done all that. He was really there because he wanted to showcase Jesus. He was really there because he wanted to showcase what it was like to be a Christian. And that's one of the reasons that I looked up to him and that I still do look up to him. And so you're going to go through, you'll see the intro video here in a second. They're going to say all his titles, all the stuff that he's won. But he's a great speaker. He's a phenomenal athlete. And guys, welcome Shaun Murray.
Wow, this is crazy. Okay. I'm really excited that they gave me this mic because I get to move and use my hands. I'm half Italian, so a lot happens here. So stick with me on that. But yes, I've been wakeboarding professionally for like a really long time, since VHS. Thank you guys for getting that, because you hand a kid a VCR now and they're like, what's this about? Like, what am I gonna do with this? But yes, I have been able to do this for a long time, and the best part about my job is that I have opportunities to share the gospel of Jesus Christ, because the reason that I'm here is not for me. And though Austin said that, I want to say it as well. Like, yes, I've gotten some trophies, I've won some world titles, I was able to compete on American Ninja Warrior. Those things are literally in my attic, and that really doesn't matter. Like, those things are cool, and what they do is they allow me to have a foot in the door with some people, with some kids, with some adults, to have a conversation of what really matters. Okay, so give me a second. I'm gonna get some things set up here, because I'm gonna jump around a little bit, and what I really wanna talk about is what we have the opportunities to do in life. Because if you think about it, like, we have so many opportunities to enjoy creation. We have opportunities to enjoy our abilities. And it seems like my job is being an entertainer, like get out on the water and perform. But what I've learned over the years is something that I kind of taught myself through my signature. If I go to an event, some kids want to get my signature, and I would always like have this anxiety of like, what do I write? Because I don't want to just write their name or write to Jimmy and then just sign my name. So I would always try to write something like some kind of phrase. And all of a sudden I found myself writing, enjoy your ride. And I didn't realize that I was creating this kind of term that would become this kind of slogan that I say at the end of like my YouTube videos that actually becomes a little bit of a motto for my life. And it's not just my ride on my wakeboard, it's my ride in life. And I encourage you guys to kind of grab onto this as well, because what enjoy your ride has meant to me is that I want to become an experiencer, not a performer. Too often we base how we feel in life upon people's reactions. And if you really think about it, we do it with absolutely everything. We base how we feel upon how somebody looks or thinks of us. It can be at work, it can be with a hobby, a sport, whatever it may be. You could be writing a paper and you're thinking in the future is, how is somebody gonna react to me? But what I think we're doing when we do that is we miss the moment that God has given us to enjoy his creation, our abilities, and hopefully eventually share the gospel. And a really cool thing, a quote that I learned was from a guy named Mike Rowe. Anybody know who Mike Rowe is? Dirty Jobs. And somebody was asking him, like, what is something that you really saw common out there in the world? And he said, it was something that I found where people were enjoying themselves the most in life. And it was actually something that contradicted what most people would say. And people often will say, follow your passions, follow your dreams, and go after those. And he says, I actually challenge it. I say, don't follow your passions. Bring passion to everything you do. And when you do that, that is where joy can really be found. Because when we base our reactions upon other people's, when we base our experience upon other people's reactions, we're essentially taking our joy, handing it to someone in hopes of getting it back. If you do that, you're missing the opportunity to really experience the joy that God has given within you. And I think that's where being a Christian can really stem from, and how we can really experience the joy. People can see the joy, and people want to know about the joy. The mission in life, a lot of times it can really seem like it's supposed to make your wife happy, happy wife, happy life. Make your kids happy, make your boss happy. Those things are not bad, but our true mission is to share the gospel of Christ. So how do we do that? I'm going to take you through some of the things that I've done in my life that have really changed my perspective on life. And what's cool about coming here to Discovery is that this is where it happened. Not in this building, this is new, this is amazing. You guys have done an amazing job. But it was at the old campus. Do you guys still have that campus? No? Okay. So I was going to Discovery for quite some time. And I grew up in church. And I lived in California, then eventually St. Louis, Missouri, came down to Florida to go to college. And going to church is just what I did. I grew up in scouts, youth group, summer camp, winter camp. And as a Christian, I could go and do the sword drill. Who remembers sword drills, right? Philippians 3:23, and you go, I got it, and you win, right? So I knew the Bible, but I never really read through it, and I'm gonna get to there in a minute. But what happened was, I had different experiences through life, and it was when I was at a winter camp that I was sitting there and the speaker shared in an analogy, what Christ had done for me on the cross. And it really hit me deep to the point where everyone had cleared out, everyone had left, and I was sitting there weeping, and it really struck me deep. But it didn't entirely change my trajectory. I went to college. Somebody saw me wakeboard while I was here in Florida. The guy introduced himself as the editor of Wakeboard magazine. I'd seen this like contest was gonna be down the street from where I was teaching some water skiing and wakeboarding. And he said, hey, you're good. And I had just done like good one day, bad the next. And I was like, I don't think I did that good. He goes, hey, you're good. I'm the editor of Wakeboard magazine. You should try to compete on the pro tour. Whoa. So I went and told my dad, this guy said I should give it a shot. So I went for it. I ended up going on to the pro tour. I said, Dad, I'm going to school. I've been in school for a year, and I went into my third semester, and I was kind of struggling at that balance between wakeboarding and school, and my dad said, all right, we're gonna set some goals. If you don't achieve these goals, you're gonna go back into school, because my request was, can I take a semester off school? He says, if you don't achieve these goals, you are not going to go and continue this dream. You're gonna go back into school, but we're gonna write down some goals. And I achieved them. And then we did it again and again. And I competed on the pro tour for 20 years. That's a pretty expired shelf life in most athletes' terms. I'm 45, turning 46. I still wakeboard. I stopped competing about 5 years ago. But I still get to use my platform to share the gospel because of how we get to be in front of people as wakeboarders. Now YouTube is a big thing, if you've heard of that. And so YouTube, Instagram, social media is a big thing for me. And that was my cue to do this. You guys meet every Tuesday at what time? It starts 6:30. Okay, you guys, this is gonna be a group effort, okay? So you guys, bear with me. Hey, what's up? I'm at Discovery. This is 6:30 a.m. every Tuesday morning. Look at this group of guys. You gotta come check this out. Make sure you don't miss this every week. Okay, so that's gonna hopefully go up on social media. So yes, I get to do that. And so through the years of wakeboarding, as I was getting into this world, I was able to, move away from home, and as I'm getting into it, then I was still going to church. That was my rhythm. That was my life. But being on the pro wakeboard tour every weekend, you pretty much had the opportunity to go out and party a little bit, then go back to the contest and go to party. But I was a Christian, so I wasn't like going crazy or anything. But I definitely was putting a foot into the party pool. Like I'll try that out. But I kept my foot in the church pool. But I kept my foot in the party pool. And I found myself kind of in this dance of trying to live the Christian life, trying to be that example, but at the same time doing what I wanted to do. As I was going through this, I started to literally struggle with the existence of God, because I started to get into this period of my life like, God, if you're real, how could you create this world that has pain and suffering? And God, how can you do this? And I started creating these question marks, and I remember that it was my older brother who said, God isn't afraid of your questions. I think he's more afraid of you not asking. And so I wasn't afraid to engage in those things, but the more I questioned, as I had my foot in the party pool, I realized if I kind of doubt God and maybe he's not there, then I can do what I want. And so then I started to get a little bit more into that. And I found myself still going to church, but I was still kind of in the mix of this. And I felt like there was this break in communication, that I had this interruption, like a bad phone signal between myself and God, because there were these things that I just knew were keeping me from that ultimate embarkment on that journey that I felt like God was calling, but at the same time, I was just like, I don't know. Like I was really questioning God. And so I got to this point where while we were, like Austin said, on the pro tour, I would bring my guitar, I would lead some music, small groups, but while I was coming back home to Discovery, I had a friend of mine, Rocky Berra. Where are you? Rocky, okay. Rocky asked me one day, and this is why this is pretty special I get to come here. Rocky asked me one day, he goes, hey, bring your guitar and let's play some music. If you've ever played music before and somebody offers to play music, like, it's a really fun thing to do, especially if they're the worship leader at church. You're like, that's cool, but I'm definitely not gonna play in front of that big church, no way. And so I was like, oh, I'll just play, maybe I'll learn something. You exchange songs. So I go to his office, we sit down, we play, it was a fun thing. He goes, all right, cool, show up on Thursday for practice. I'm like, no way, I see what you're doing. He's like, no, just show up, just come and check it out. But bring your guitar. I'm like, well, I'll sit up front and I'll just watch. And so I go into the cafe. It was like it was kind of like this, here, we'll just nudge him in just a little bit. And so I show up, they have a spot on stage for me. I'm like, come on, man. I see what you guys are doing. I don't know if you remember this, Rocky, but you guys are like, all right, come on, go get up there. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna play with the band. Okay, I'm not gonna miss this opportunity, so I'm playing with the band. And I found myself playing on a regular basis. One time I even got up in front, actually it was more than that. I was up in front on the main stage. I borrowed a buddy's guitar, Mike Lawton, really nice guitar. And maybe you were at church this Sunday, but I put his guitar on this guitar stand that was somebody else's, didn't know that it was gonna happen. In the middle of the pastor speaking, I think it was Loveless, the guitar falls over. bang, and it hits, and it's like literally in the middle of him speaking, and it was the loudest, just most uncomfortable sound. That story has nothing to do with other than me feeling uncomfortable. So while I'm playing guitar, this is where I'm in that kind of dance of questioning God. Grew up in church. What is going on? One day I literally was laying down in my grass. I laid down. It's not like I did this on a regular basis. I was like, what's going on? I was just laying there in my yard, and I'm looking up at the sky, and all of a sudden, God started to speak to me. And he started to give me this perspective of, let me just talk to you about creation just for a second. And God starts to share some of this knowledge, things that we've learned, but just really in an experiential way of God saying, do you feel how comfortable you are right now just laying on this giant rock, spinning through space at 100,000 miles an hour that is 1,000,000 miles away from the sun, and you were just able to lay there comfortably? Sure, in Florida, it's a lot more comfortable, but if we were any closer or any farther, we're gonna burn up, we're gonna freeze. I'm sure a lot of you have heard that. And then as he's starting to walk me through just like that, just that big picture, then zoom into, do you see those trees? Those trees are breathing out oxygen as they breathe in your carbon dioxide, and you're doing the opposite. And it's this just amazing relationship of life, and that's just a small relationship here on earth of how things work. And then what really got me was eyesight. And he's like, just the fact that you were seeing this. And if you've ever seen the intricacies of the eyeball and how many nerve endings and the things that it takes, the things that we are taking for granted, that you guys are sitting here, we have holes in our head that have this organ, and we can absorb light, and it's better than any camera that they can create, faster and more definition than anything. And it's just something we just open our eyes and we have them. Now, that's not me trying to convince you of the existence of God. That is where I was. And when that happened, I was like, all right, God, I cannot deny your existence. Have you chosen to talk to me? And that's when the Bible, that is God's way of reaching out and communicating with us. And so what happened while I was sitting there just kind of laying in the grass, I'm just landing on this creator thought. It was not long after that day that I was back into church. I was playing guitar. I finished playing. I sat down. I remember I was sitting over kind of on this section, front row by myself. And it wasn't anything necessarily the speaker was speaking, which is great. It takes the pressure off of me of what I'm saying, because the Holy Spirit is really the one who's doing the work here. And so while I was sitting there, God starts saying to me, with your foot in the party pool, how are you up here leading these people in worship while you're still in that dance? Chase after me. And I'm like, God, what do I do? Go home, walk away from these things, throw these things away, separate yourself from that party pool, and read the word all the way. Though I grew up in church, I never read the Bible front to back, and for me, reading a book, I didn't do that many things. I didn't read that many books. Like reading a full magazine article, like to sit down and like get through that whole thing, I don't read that much. And if you're like me, if you're like, you look at the Bible and you go, wow, that's a lot. Larry, could I have my my Bible under there? I was supposed to bring that up, sorry. Thank you. 66 books, many of them letters. I decided I'm just gonna do it a little bit at a time, because what I don't wanna do is I don't wanna start this journey that I don't think that I can finish, because as soon as I was like, oh, I can't make it, all right. It's kind of like that New Year's resolution workout. So I decided I'm just gonna do this. I'm gonna go for 5 pages a day. That was actually pretty big task, because some of those books are a little bit harder to get through, but I stuck with it. It took me over 2.5 years. And I got to the end, I'm like, well, now what? Do it again. And I got to the end and I do it again. And I've gone through it more than a handful of times. But here are some of the things that I've learned. When I'm going through my day, when I'm going through today, I know tomorrow morning I'm gonna meet God. I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna read from his word, I'm gonna spend time in prayer, and I'm gonna essentially set my launch pad for that day. Because like I said, our mission today is to share the gospel in whatever way, shape, or form that we can. And if we are starting our day rooted in the word, it can totally change our trajectory. In the same way that we move that rocket just a little bit, it can totally go into a different direction. So if there's anything that you walk away from today, what I want you to remember is read the word every day, spend time in prayer. I encourage you to do it the first thing because life can get spinning up real fast. And we can get a little bit ahead of ourselves, and then all of a sudden, we haven't started our day in the word. And some people are gonna do it at night. If that's your thing already, rock and roll. If you haven't started it, I encourage you to read the word. And what I think a kind of a fun way to do it, one of the ways I've gone through it, is read a chapter of Old Testament, a chapter of New Testament. And when you do that, you see Jesus pop up in the Old Testament and the New Testament, and you see so many things that really come to life. When I grew up in church, I thought that the Bible was kind of like this do's and don'ts, like the expanded version of the 10 Commandments. But what I've really learned, and every time I go through it, I learn something else, but what I've really learned is that when we try to do life on our own, things don't go so well. And then we realize we need God. And so the perspective of reading the word every day and meeting God in prayer every morning has really allowed me to see the direction and the importance of where I should be every day. So one of the things that really was a cool moment was taken by a buddy of mine, a good friend. And it's this photo that for me is one of the most iconic photos that has been ever taken of me, and some say in the sport. And this is something that Larry Maddox's son Joey took of me. And what's cool, the story between myself and Joey is that when I first moved to Florida, he was one of my original wakeboard students. We did some riding together at a young age. He even brought his mom's camera out the first time and got this, some of these other photos. So we had always worked together. And then we got this photo back like 10 years ago. But the story behind this photo is that about a week before it was taken, I was out riding on the lake for what I would just call just a hot lap. The sun was going down, the lake glassed off. It does it once in a while. And I just wanted to do this circle around the lake, just kind of carving around, just enjoying the water, enjoying my ride. And what I started to do, I had done it before kind of, but not to this degree, where I grabbed the rope behind my back and I just started to lean, and I was just trying to see how close I could get my nose to the water. Nobody else was out there. It was the boat driver, it was me. Nobody else was looking, and I was doing this, and I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. And so Joey and I were getting together to shoot some content for another company, and I said, hey, Joey, before we get started on our photo shoot, can you get a photo of me just really quick? I want to see how close I get my nose to the water. And so we go out, and we're not thinking about the conditions. And we did just one pass, because as soon as a boat does that, the lake is no longer like that, right? And so I get out there, and I'm kind of just like laying down, and throw the photo up one more time. I look like I'm kind of just chill, whatever. There's so much strain and force on my body, like so much, but I was just trying to like see how close I could get it, not thinking about the reflection or anything. And so we take the photo. That one just kind of goes away in our heads, and then we go about our normal photo shoot of what we think we're doing. And I couldn't tell you what happened to the rest of that shoot. We finish that shoot, we go into my house, he pulls out his computer, he starts looking through things. I'm in another room, he goes, hey, come here, you gotta see this. And he pulls it up, and I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. People have asked if it's photoshopped. It's not. That's really what happened out there. And in the photo world, you have your landscape mode, and your portrait mode, right? I've heard somebody call it hamburger or hot dog, right? Okay. So he shot in hamburger, not the hot dog, but magazines are in that vertical portrait. And so we submitted it to the magazine, to Wakeboard Magazine, which is based here in Orlando. And they said, that's awesome, but can you shoot it in vertical? Yeah, we tried. We tried and tried and tried. We actually tried for a couple months. And every time the lake would start to glass off, I'd call Joey, Joey, it's happening, get over here. He would drive across town. We would get there. We'd get out in the boat and a jet ski would go, Joey, it's happening, come on over. I think it's gonna happen. We're gonna get it. We go, we get the photo and there's a little ripple. Not even like nearly as good as that, or the light just wasn't as good. Everything had to line up. And what we learned was we couldn't recreate that moment. It was a moment that we didn't intend to show. It was for us to see. But I ended up getting this reflection, this image. And it makes me realize how often do we show the glory of God to others when we don't intend to, when we don't know they're looking, when we think we're getting ready for a big moment in life, there's probably something else that's happening you don't even know. And so the best way to have yourself rooted when people aren't looking, when you think people aren't looking, is to start your day reading, to start your day praying. Because that is where you're going to find yourself getting that right trajectory, getting that right perspective. Because it's honestly in the moments that we really don't think are those big moments. Like in life we think, all right, what college am I gonna go to? And who am I gonna marry? And all these, and those are big decisions. But if you look back at your life, it's probably just a guy that you ran into at the store that then got you a job that did, there's so many things that I could point back to, massive moments in my life that I didn't realize would take me in a whole different direction. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. I haven't told many people this, and now I'm gonna tell a lot. I was able to be in a wakeboard video game. And if you guys ever saw Tony Hawk's game, like a wakeboard game, Tony Hawk's real big skateboarder, well, the same company came to me. But the way they came to me, not many people know. You would think, like, I mean, at the time, like, I had won some competitions and things like that. But there was one day that I happened to be wakeboarding at the Wakeboard Cable Park. That's the one that's right off of 528 when you're driving by the airport. You see that big complex. Well, I brought my dog that day, and I happened to just get her on my board, and I'm riding around with my dog on my board. And if I'm riding with my dog, I'm literally just standing there. Some people will call it animal cruelty, but she actually kind of liked it, and so she would ride around with me. That day, this guy comes up to me and introduces himself as the guy from Activision, which is the company that created all these big video games. And he goes, "That was really cool what you did with your dog. I want to talk to you about a video game." I'm like, really? Of all the things that I've done, I went and wakeboarded with my dog? And that's what got me this? So it's to say there's so many things in life that we really may not be intending to display what we think are gonna be the big moments, but that is why I think starting our days, because our integrity, our values, our honesty are built in the little moments in life. I'll show you just kind of my kit here really quick. It's this goofy little light. And the reason I show this, it's like a little robot, right? The reason I show this little book light is to say that it's probably gonna be a sacrifice. I'm up before the sun, I'm up before my kids, my wife, and I spend time reading and praying. But as we know, the things in life that are worth it are usually a little bit of work. Working out, eating right, relationships. But if I didn't think it wasn't worth it, I wouldn't do it, I definitely wouldn't encourage you to do it. But if there's one thing that I think that would make a big difference in your life, it is that thing. If you're doing it now, I know you're agreeing with me. If you're not doing it now, I encourage you to give it a shot. So often in life, we look to different people in our life for direction. And if you're into sports, and if let's say you're a basketball player and you could connect with the absolute best basketball coach, would you do that? Especially if he offered it every day for free? Absolutely. This is the creator of the world. He wants what's best for you. Like, reach out to God, and like, that's what I'm gonna leave that at. Like, we have access to the Almighty. Let's absolutely lean into that. I'm gonna bring up somebody here in just a little bit. But first I'm gonna tell you about, I'm stealing in an analogy from Christy Overton. She is a professional water skier. She was world champion slalom skier. And she has this really cool picture that translates into what I think all towed water sports. So wakeboarding, water skiing, kneeboarding, whatever. And what it has to do with is our relationship between ourselves and God. And the boat is something that we need. Like, if I want to go wakeboarding, I need a power source. I need something to pull me along. I just can't sit in the water and just go. It doesn't work. So the boat is the power source. God is our power source, and that line has been thrown out to us. And what we have to do is, all we have to do is understand that God's love is so big that he sent his son to us so that we could experience life everlasting. Do we trust in him? Do we choose to hang on to that rope to get off the dock, to get out of our comfort zone? It's a really cool picture of that gospel, and you can even dive deeper into it. The boat's going through the water ahead of us. God knows what's coming. We're gonna have some falls in life. We might even fall like to the point where the boat's just going. God knows, he comes back. The rope goes around us, gives us a big hug. Do you wanna keep going? Yeah, let's keep going. Let's hit it. Let's do it again. And so often we think that as a Christian, like, our life is based upon works and doing good things, but so much of what our life really should be based upon is working from thanks. Right? Like, understanding, when you really become a Christian, if you understand the love of God, what we do is we completely understand that it is all based upon love. And we've been given this gift. And that gift, all we want to do is say, it's free to anyone who receives it. But too often we really go and try to make it a little bit more about us and what we do and what we can do, and we end up working a little bit too hard. So I want to bring up somebody's strong guy. You mind helping me out just real quick? Yeah. So, yeah. Oh, sorry, there's stairs over here. So when I'm teaching someone to wakeboard or water ski, I show them a few different things. And you'll hear like knees, trees, freeze. It means like keep your eyes out, right? They have this position, but you have to get in the water. You have to literally be sitting in the water. And it's time to get up and going. How's it going, Andre? Shaun. And what I do is I show people that the harder you try, the harder it is. And truly, like, most guys struggle with getting up compared to women because, like, we're like, I'm not gonna fail on this, and they put in this effort. They use muscle and willpower, and they're like, I'm not gonna look like an idiot now. And so they really put a lot of work into it. Okay, but the reality is when you go to get up on a wakeboard, the less you try, the better it is. So I'm gonna sit down, you're gonna stay here, and all I want you to do is help me get to my feet, okay? So it does take some effort, right? But we think a lot of times that getting to our feet means that we need to rocket up out of the water. And so people really try to put a lot into it. So go ahead and pull me up to my feet. Okay, I'm there, that's it. So it took a little bit of effort, right? Some, but not much. But what I did was, I'm totally relaxed here. I'm totally relaxed here. And as he starts to pull, and so this is your guys' wakeboard lesson right now too. People try to point the board straight and they try to do this, but watch if I just use my arm. Go ahead and pull. If I just use just my bicep, right? If I'm here, now this isn't me using my legs either. So if I'm just using one arm, that's not even two, right? If I start to do this, I'm a pretty small guy. He's a pretty strong guy. And what happens is we end up putting all this pressure, right? And the board becomes a plow. And that's what life can feel like so oftentimes. We feel like I'm just plowing. But what I tell people is don't use a board like a plow. It can actually go underwater and fly like a wing. So what happens is you don't need to get on top of the water. You need to get on top of the board. And for that to happen, go ahead and pull. The board goes underwater. Right now the water is about here. And now the board's flying through the water like a wing. As long as my heels are planted just a little bit and my toes are higher, the board flies up, and then I can stand up. Hey, give it up for him. He did great. Thank you. Yeah. So, this is something that I've been teaching people for a long time, okay? But I haven't really tightened up that analogy. So today in your guys' workshop, I need your help. Literally, how are some of those things that I just talked about? Like when we're trying to use too much muscle in our arms, when we're trying to use the physics in our legs, rather than just having our heels planted, right? Maybe there's something planted in the word, planted in prayer, letting that board fly. The board has to go underwater at first. The board doesn't need to get on top of the water, it needs to get under us. So this is something that just in the last couple weeks as I've been thinking about this, coming to talk to you guys, I wanted to take that analogy, that wakeboard analogy, to grow this visual of what it takes to get on our feet, to get up on top of the water, and how that can relate in our relationship with Christ. So that is part of what I want you guys to workshop for me. If we can hire you guys out for that, that'd be great. So one last thing that I wanted to share with you guys. As I was in this space in my head where I was trying to just land the plane, I'm like, God, are you out there? I need answers to my questions. I imagine you guys have had some questions before, and we feel like we need to get some sort of concrete answers. I happened to be on this shoot. We were in the Caribbean somewhere, and it was this beautiful blue ocean with this seashell-filled beach. Some beaches are like really crushed shells down to it's like a powder, and some are on contrast. They're like a lot of big heavy shells. They're kind of uncomfortable to walk on. So I'm walking, it's kind of a crunchy beach. And as I was in this space in my head, God started talking to me. And he started to just share this image of the questions that we have aren't even close to the answers that are out there. So much as when you are on the shore of the beach, what you are standing on, God is telling me, what you are standing on here is like trying to visualize with the shells that you can see as far as your eyes can go, trying to create in your head what is really out there. And as we know, the world is 2/3 water. Am I right in that quote? It's like 70%, it's a massive amount of water. And I want you to think just for a moment right now what it would be like to walk from here to, say, Tampa, right? But let's go off of I-4, just a few feet into the woods. What would you see between here and Tampa? The amount of wildlife, the amount of things you're like, wow, I didn't know that was here. And that's just here to there. Now imagine going across the United States. Imagine going across Russia. Imagine going across China. Imagine going across Africa. The amount of things that you would see just in your path. And that's on land. That's 1/3 of your path. The amount of ocean that is out there is so expansive. And then God is saying, look, you can try to ask me a bunch of these questions, that's awesome, but for you to try to get all of the answers is like looking around here and trying to create the amount of life that is out there. And the eternity and the life that is to come is so much more than the life that we see here. So be okay with some of the gaps and just know that God is so good, God is so loving, and that when we start our days seeking him, praying, reading, and I'll say it again, start your days rooted in prayer. Start your days reading. So if you leave here today and you're like, what did he speak on? He said I should read my Bible and I should pray. So let's pray right now. Father God, thank you so much for the opportunities to see your glory, to see your creation. I ask that you take these men out into the workplace, out into their families, into their friends, wherever they are, God. Help them be rooted in your word, seeking after you, to do nothing other than to share your joy with others. In your son's name we pray. Amen.